Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a software engineer, and I just bought my first condo with my own two hands. A beautiful $450,000 place downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. I worked 80-hour weeks, saved every penny, and finally had something that was truly mine. But at my brother's birthday party last month, my own parents attacked me with a champagne bottle, just because I refused to sign over the deed. Have you ever been treated like a family ATM? Like your success only exists to fund everyone else's dreams? Because that's exactly what happened to me, and what they did next will shock you. Let me take you back to that night. It was Marcus's 28th birthday party, my golden child brother who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Mom had spent weeks planning this elaborate celebration at their house. The dining room was decorated with gold streamers. There was a 3-tier chocolate cake, and she'd invited about 30 people. Relatives, family friends, Marcus's college buddies. I showed up with an expensive watch for Marcus, genuinely excited to celebrate with him. But the moment I walked through the door, something felt off. Dad barely acknowledged me with a grunt, and Mom gave me this tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Throughout dinner, I noticed them whispering to each other, shooting glances in my direction. Marcus seemed oblivious, laughing with his friends and enjoying being the center of attention like always. After we sang happy birthday and Marcus blew out his candles, Dad stood up and clinked his knife against his wine glass. "Attention, everyone," he announced, his voice carrying that authoritative tone I knew so well from childhood. "Before we continue the celebration, Sarah and I need to have a private family discussion." My stomach dropped. In our family, private family discussions were never good news. They meant someone was about to be lectured, guilt-tripped, or manipulated into doing something they didn't want to do. And from the way both parents were staring at me, I knew I was the target. "Actually, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. It's Marcus's special night." "No," Mom interjected sharply. "This needs to happen now. Family business can't wait." The party guests started looking uncomfortable, sensing the tension building in the room. Marcus frowned, finally picking up on the weird energy. "What's going on?" he asked. Dad ignored him and pulled out a manila folder from the kitchen counter. My blood ran cold when I saw what was inside. Legal documents, transfer papers. He'd come prepared. "Sarah," Dad began, his voice taking on that fake reasonable tone he used when he wanted something. "Your mother and I have been discussing your condo purchase. While we're proud that you've done well for yourself, we think it's time you remembered where you came from. Who helped you get to where you are today?" Here we go, I thought. The guilt trip was starting right on schedule. "We need you to sign these papers," Mom added, sliding the documents across the dining table toward me. "We're transferring ownership of your condo to the family trust. It's the right thing to do." The room went dead silent. Even Marcus's friends stopped their conversations to stare. I picked up the papers with trembling hands, scanning the legal language. They wanted me to sign over my entire $450,000 condo, the home I'd worked myself to the bone to afford, to a family trust that they controlled. "Are you serious right now?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Completely serious," Dad replied. "Sarah, we sacrificed everything to raise you and your brother. We paid for your college. We let you live at home rent-free until you were 25. This family invested in your success, and now it's time to give back." "I paid for my own college with student loans," I shot back, my voice getting louder. "And I paid you rent the entire 2 years I lived here after graduation. I have the canceled checks to prove it." Mom's face twisted into that familiar expression of wounded martyrdom. "How dare you speak to us like that? After everything we've done for you, we gave you life, we gave you opportunities, and this is how you repay us?" The guilt trip playbook was in full swing now. I could feel the eyes of 30 party guests boring into me, judging me, watching this family drama unfold. Some of Marcus's friends were filming with their phones, because apparently my humiliation was entertainment now. "Mom, I'm not signing away my home," I said firmly, pushing the papers back across the table. "I earned that condo. I worked 16-hour days for 3 years to save up the down payment. It's mine." That's when Dad's fake reasonable mask slipped completely. His face turned red with rage, and he slammed his fist on the table so hard that the birthday cake jumped. "Mine?" he roared. "You ungrateful little brat! Nothing you have is yours. We created you. We shaped you. Every success you think you've earned came from us. Ungrateful! Mom shrieked, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. You are the most selfish, ungrateful child I have ever seen. Your brother would never treat us this way. And there it was, the comparison to perfect Marcus that had haunted my entire childhood. Marcus, who'd dropped out of college twice. Marcus, who still lived at home at 28. Marcus, who'd never held a job longer than 6 months. But somehow, I was the disappointing child because I refused to hand over my life's work. Sign the papers, Sarah, Dad demanded, his voice low and threatening now. Sign them right now, or there will be consequences. No, I said, standing up and backing away from the table. I'm not signing anything, and I think I should go. That's when everything went completely insane. Mom grabbed the champagne bottle from the ice bucket, the expensive Dom Perignon she'd bought special for Marcus's birthday, and before I could react, she swung it at my head like a baseball bat. The bottle connected with my temple with a sickening crack, and I stumbled backward, seeing stars. How dare you embarrass us like this? She screamed, raising the bottle again. In front of everyone, sign those papers now! Dad joined in, grabbing my arm so hard I knew there would be bruises. You're not leaving until you fix this mess you've created! The party guests were freaking out now. Some were recording, others were backing toward the door, and a few were actually cheering like this was some kind of reality TV show. Marcus just stood there frozen, not defending me, not stopping them, just watching his big sister get attacked by our parents. Get off me! I screamed, trying to break free from Dad's grip. My head was throbbing where the bottle had hit, and I could feel something warm trickling down my face. Blood, probably. Not until you sign! Mom yelled, waving the bottle around wildly. You owe this family. You owe us everything. I managed to break away and stumble toward the front door, but Dad caught up to me in the hallway. He spun me around and shoved me hard against the wall, his face inches from mine. You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities? He hissed. You think you can just take our investment in you and keep it all for yourself? You're nothing without this family, Sarah. Nothing. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I shoved him back with all my strength. Get away from me, I shouted. Both of you are insane. I fumbled for the door handle, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn it. Behind me, I could hear Mom sobbing dramatically, probably performing for the party guests. Look what you've done, she wailed. Look how you've ruined Marcus's birthday. This is all your fault. I finally got the door open and ran to my car, my head still spinning from the bottle attack. As I fumbled with my keys, I could hear Dad shouting from the front porch. Don't you dare drive away from this, Sarah. We're not finished. You will sign those papers. But I was already backing out of the driveway, tears streaming down my face, my temple throbbing with pain. In my rearview mirror, I could see the party guests filing out of the house, some still filming, others shaking their heads in disgust. Marcus appeared in the doorway, but he didn't run after me. He didn't call out. He just stood there watching me drive away. The next few days were a nightmare of gaslighting and manipulation that would make any therapist's head spin. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who'd heard their version of events. According to my parents' story, I had violently attacked them when they'd tried to have a reasonable discussion about family finances. They claimed I'd destroyed Marcus's birthday party with my selfish tantrum, and that I'd physically assaulted Dad when he tried to calm me down. The texts started pouring in within hours. Aunt Linda. Sarah, I can't believe what your parents told me. How could you hit your own father? Uncle Bob. Very disappointed in you, young lady. Family comes first. Cousin Jennifer. Your mom is in tears. You need to apologize immediately. Not one of them asked for my side of the story. Not one of them questioned why my parents would have legal documents ready to steal my home. They just accepted the narrative that I was the villain, the ungrateful daughter who'd betrayed her loving family. Mom posted on Facebook the next morning a long, dramatic essay about how children these days have no respect for their parents, how she'd sacrificed everything to raise me, and how I'd broken her heart with my selfishness. The post got hundreds of likes and dozens of comments from family friends expressing their shock and disappointment in me. She painted herself as the wounded mother, the victim of her cruel daughter's ambition. Dad took a different approach. He started calling me directly, leaving voicemails that alternated between threats and guilt trips. Sarah, you need to come home and fix this mess you've created. Your mother is devastated. Marcus is humiliated. The whole family is suffering because of your selfishness. If you don't make this right, there will be permanent consequences for your place in this family. When the calls didn't work, he moved to financial threats. I hope you realize that condo won't mean much when you're completely cut off from everyone who ever loved you. We'll make sure every relative, every family friend, every connection you have through us knows exactly what kind of person you really are. But the worst part was Marcus. 3 days after his ruined birthday party, he finally called me. I hoped that maybe he'd seen how insane our parents had acted. Maybe he'd be the voice of reason. I was wrong. Sarah, he said, his voice cold and distant, you really messed up this time. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? My friends are posting videos online calling our family psycho. My girlfriend's parents saw the whole thing on social media. You've made us all look like trash. Marcus, I said, my voice breaking, they attacked me with a champagne bottle because I wouldn't sign over my condo. How is that my fault? Because you escalated it, he shot back. You could have just talked to them privately, worked something out. But no, you had to make a scene in front of everyone. You had to humiliate them in their own home. They tried to steal my house. They're your parents, Sarah. They raised you, they invested in you, and maybe they do deserve some consideration. But even if you disagreed with them, you didn't have to handle it like that. You could have been more respectful. There it was. The gaslighting had worked on him too. Somehow, my parents' attempt to literally steal my home had been reframed as a reasonable request that I'd handled poorly. My getting attacked with a bottle had become my fault for escalating the situation. I can't believe you're taking their side, I whispered. I'm not taking sides, Marcus replied, but his tone said otherwise. I'm just saying that if you want to fix this family, you need to apologize to Mom and Dad and find some way to make this right. Maybe you don't have to give them the whole condo, but you could help them out financially. They're getting older, Sarah. They won't be able to work forever. And there was the real agenda. It wasn't about respect or gratitude or family unity. It was about money. They wanted access to my success, my resources, my financial security. And they'd convinced Marcus that I owed it to them. After I hung up on Marcus, I sat in my beautiful condo, the home I'd earned through years of sacrifice and hard work, and felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My parents had turned the entire extended family against me. My brother, the one person I thought might understand, had joined their campaign to make me the villain. But what they didn't know, what none of them realized, was that I'd kept something from my childhood that would change everything. Something that had been sitting in my jewelry box for 15 years, forgotten until this moment of crisis, made me remember its importance. The old house key, the brass key to my parents' front door that I'd carried since I was 13 years old, back when I was responsible for letting myself in after school and starting dinner for the family. The key to the house where they'd attacked me, where they'd tried to steal my future, where they'd turned my own brother against me. What they didn't know was that house. The house where they'd beaten me, where they'd humiliated me, where they felt so safe and powerful, wasn't actually theirs to control. And that old brass key wasn't just a childhood memento. It was about to become the key to justice, because there was something about that house, something about the way it had been purchased and who had really paid for it, that would flip this entire situation upside down. Something my parents had conveniently forgotten to mention in their version of family history. Something that would make them realize they'd picked the wrong daughter to mess with. The brass key felt heavy in my palm as I sat in my condo that night, my head still aching from the champagne bottle attack. I'd been staring at it for hours, remembering all those afternoons when I was 13, 14, 15, letting myself into that house, cooking dinner, cleaning up, taking care of Marcus while our parents worked late. Or at least that's what I thought they were doing. But something had been nagging at me ever since Dad pulled out those legal documents. The way he'd acted so confident, so entitled to my property. The way Mom had screamed about investments and what we gave you. It reminded me of conversations I'd overheard as a kid, whispered arguments between my parents about money and debts and things I didn't understand then. I walked to my closet and pulled out a dusty cardboard box I hadn't touched in years, childhood mementos, old photos, school papers my mom had saved. But buried underneath everything else was a manila envelope marked important papers in my grandmother's careful handwriting. My dad's mother, Grandma Rose, who'd passed away when I was 16. I'd grabbed this envelope from her house after the funeral, thinking it might have family photos or recipes. I'd never actually opened it, but now, with that brass key burning in my hand and my parents' threats echoing in my ears, something told me to look inside. My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope. Inside were legal documents, property deeds, bank statements, and a will I'd never seen before. But it wasn't Grandma Rose's will. The name at the top made my heart stop. Last Will and Testament of Margaret Elizabeth Chin, my maternal grandmother, who died when I was 8. I'd always wondered why I'd never heard details about Grandma Chin's estate. My parents said she'd been poor, that she'd left nothing behind but memories. But as I read through the documents, a very different picture emerged. Grandma Chin had owned a small but successful restaurant in Chinatown. When she sold it before her death, she'd received $340,000, a fortune back in 1998. According to her will, this money was to be held in trust for her granddaughter, me, until I turned 25. The will specifically stated that the funds were for my education, my first home purchase, or other major life investments. But there was more. At the bottom of the stack was a property deed dated 15 years ago, the exact deed to my parents' current house, the purchase price, $295,000. The funding source, Margaret Chin Estate Trust. My grandmother had bought my parents' house, with money intended for me. I grabbed my laptop and started digging deeper, cross-referencing public records and property databases. The more I found, the more furious I became. When I'd turned 25 3 years ago, I should have inherited that trust. Instead, according to the bank statements tucked in the envelope, my parents had been the trustees, and they'd spent every penny. My college loans that I'd struggled to pay off for years, Grandma Chin's trust was supposed to cover my education. The down payment I'd saved for my condo through 80-hour work weeks and ramen noodles. I should have had $340,000 sitting in an account with my name on it. But the most sickening discovery was yet to come. I found a series of emails printed out and tucked into the envelope, correspondence between my parents and the estate lawyer. In one email from 2019, my mother had written, "Sarah doesn't need to know about the trust. She's doing fine on her own, and we have Marcus to think about too. The house payments are manageable with the trust funds." In another email, Dad had argued, "Sarah's always been the independent one. This money is better used to secure the family home. She'll understand when she's older." They had stolen my inheritance. They had used my grandmother's gift to me to buy themselves a house. And then, when I'd finally succeeded in buying my own home through years of struggle and sacrifice, they'd tried to steal that too. I was shaking with rage, but I was also thinking clearly for the first time in days. I took photos of every document, every email, every bank statement. Then I called the law office whose letterhead appeared on several documents. "Whitman Rodriguez and Associates," a receptionist answered. "Hi, I need to speak with someone about an estate matter. The Margaret Chin Trust from 1998. There was a pause. "Please hold." A few minutes later, a woman's voice came on the line. "This is Patricia Rodriguez. Are you Sarah Chin Davis?" "Yes, that's me." "Oh my God," she said, and I could hear the shock in her voice. "I've been waiting for you to call for 3 years. Where have you been?" It turned out that Patricia Rodriguez had been trying to contact me since my 25th birthday. She'd sent letters to my parents' house, letters they'd intercepted and hidden. She'd tried calling, but my parents had told her I was traveling abroad and couldn't be reached. "Your parents have been in violation of the trust terms for 7 years, Patricia explained during our phone call. "They were supposed to transfer the remaining funds to you at 25, but they claimed they couldn't locate you. I have to be honest. We suspected something was wrong, but without being able to reach you directly, our hands were tied." "What remaining funds?" I asked, though I was afraid to hope. The trust was earning interest all these years. Even after the house purchase and other expenditures, there should be approximately $85,000 left. "But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. The house purchase was supposed to be a loan against the trust, not a gift. Your parents have been making payments back to the estate, but they're currently $47,000 behind. My head was spinning. Not only had my parents stolen my inheritance, but they'd defaulted on the loan they'd taken against it. According to Patricia, the trust terms were clear. In case of default, the beneficiary, me, could demand immediate repayment or take possession of the collateral being their house. Patricia, I said slowly, are you telling me that I legally own my parents' house? Not exactly, but you have the legal right to foreclose on the property to recover the debt. It's complicated, but yes, you have significant leverage here. We scheduled a meeting for the following day. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything: the attack at Marcus's party, the manipulation attempts, the family's campaign to turn everyone against me. I recorded Dad's threatening voicemails, screenshot the guilt-tripping text messages, and saved Mom's dramatic Facebook posts. But I also did something else. I called my Uncle David, my mom's younger brother who'd always been the reasonable one in the family. Unlike the others who'd immediately taken my parents' side, David had stayed quiet on social media and hadn't sent me any angry messages. Uncle David, I said when he answered, I need to ask you something about Grandma Chen's will. There was a long pause. Sarah, honey, what exactly do you know about your grandmother's estate? I know she left me money for my education and my future. Money that I never received. Money that my parents used to buy their house without telling me. David sighed heavily. I was wondering when this would come out. Your mother swore me to secrecy, said it was better if you didn't know. She claimed you were too young to handle that kind of money responsibly. David, I'm 28 years old. I've been an adult for a decade. I know, sweetheart. And I never agreed with their decision. Your grandmother specifically wanted that money to go to you, for your education, your first home, your future. She talked about it all the time before she died. David confirmed everything I'd discovered in the documents. He also revealed something else. My parents had borrowed additional money from him over the years, claiming they were having trouble making the house payments. He'd loaned them $15,000 just 6 months ago. They told me they were victims of the economy, that their jobs weren't paying enough to cover the mortgage. They never mentioned that the house was bought with your inheritance money. Armed with this information and David's promise to support me, I met with Patricia Rodriguez the next morning. Her law office was downtown in a gleaming high-rise that made me feel more confident about taking on my parents legally. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She laid out my options clearly. I could demand immediate repayment of the $47,000 they owed the trust, plus penalties and interest. Or I could foreclose on the house and force a sale to recover the debt. There's a third option, she said, leaning forward. Given their recent behavior toward you, we could argue that they've been acting in bad faith as trustees. We could demand a full accounting of all trust funds and potentially recover additional damages. What would that look like? Well, they've been living in a house purchased with your money for 7 years. They should have been paying fair market rent to the trust for that privilege. We're talking about potentially $150,000 to $200,000 in damages. My mind was reeling. Not only could I recover my stolen inheritance, but I could potentially force my parents to pay for the years they'd lived in my house for free. Patricia, I said, if I pursue this, what happens to them? That depends on their financial situation. If they can't pay what they owe, the house would be sold and they'd have to find somewhere else to live. The proceeds would go toward settling the debt to your estate. The irony was almost too perfect. My parents had attacked me for refusing to give them my condo, but they'd been living in a house that was rightfully mine all along. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. Patricia filed a formal notice of default on the trust loan and a demand for full accounting of the estate funds. She also filed a police report regarding the physical attack at Marcus's birthday party, using the photos I'd taken of my injuries and the witness statements from several party guests who'd reached out to me after seeing the social media videos. The legal papers were served to my parents 2 days later. According to Patricia's process server, Dad had answered the door in his bathrobe, clearly not expecting official documents. When he saw what they were, he'd started yelling about ungrateful children and family betrayal. Mom had appeared behind him and immediately started crying. Within an hour of being served, my phone was ringing nonstop. Mom called first, sobbing hysterically into the phone. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. We raised you. This will destroy us. Dad took a different approach, his voice cold with rage. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you can destroy this family with your legal games? This is war, Sarah. This is war. But the call that broke my heart was from Marcus. For the first time since his birthday party, he sounded genuinely shaken. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad are saying you're trying to steal their house. They're talking about hiring lawyers and fighting this in court. Marcus, I said calmly, I'm not stealing anything. I'm recovering what was already stolen from me. I explained everything. Grandma Chen's trust, the inheritance I'd never received, the house that had been bought with my money. I sent him photos of the legal documents, the emails where our parents had discussed hiding the trust from me, the bank statements showing how they'd spent money that should have been mine. There was silence on the other end of the line for a long time. Jesus Christ, Marcus finally whispered. I had no idea. They told me Grandma Chen died broke. They lied to both of us, Marcus, but the difference is they didn't try to steal your future. They just stole mine. But if you go through with this, they'll lose the house. Where will they live? That's not my problem anymore, I said, and I meant it. They had 7 years to make this right. They had every opportunity to tell me the truth, to pay back what they owed, to treat me with basic respect. Instead, they attacked me with a bottle when I wouldn't give them my condo, too. Marcus was quiet again. Then, Sarah, I owe you an apology. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I didn't want to see how unfairly they were treating you. But this changes everything. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and family drama. Patricia worked quickly to freeze my parents' assets and file for an emergency injunction, preventing them from selling or refinancing the house. The court granted the injunction, effectively trapping my parents in a home they could no longer afford to keep. My extended family's tune changed dramatically once the legal documents started circulating. Uncle David publicly supported me on Facebook, posting copies of Grandma Chen's will and explaining how my parents had violated the trust terms. Aunt Linda, who'd initially called me ungrateful, sent a long apology text acknowledging that she'd jumped to conclusions. Even some of Marcus's friends reached out to apologize for filming the confrontation instead of helping me when I was being attacked. But the sweetest moment came 3 weeks after I'd filed the lawsuit. I was in my condo, working from home, when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery person holding an enormous bouquet of flowers. The card read, Sarah, your grandmother would be so proud of you for standing up for yourself. Love, Uncle David. That evening, Patricia called with an update. Your parents' attorney wants to negotiate a settlement. They're offering to sign over the house in exchange for forgiveness of the debt and damages. What does that mean exactly? It means you'd own the house outright, and they'd move out voluntarily. No court battle, no additional legal fees, and no further claims from either party. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. I'll take it. 2 months after Marcus's birthday party from hell, I stood in the driveway of my childhood home, my home now, watching my parents load the last of their belongings into a moving truck. They'd found a small apartment across town, and according to Marcus, they were struggling financially without the trust money they'd been siphoning off for years. Dad refused to look at me, but as Mom walked past carrying a box of photo albums, she stopped. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice bitter. You've destroyed this family. I pulled out the old brass key, the key I'd carried for 15 years, the key that had unlocked more than just a front door. I held it up so she could see it clearly. No, Mom, I said quietly. You destroyed this family when you stole my inheritance and lied to me about it for 10 years. You destroyed it when you tried to gaslight me into thinking I owed you my life's work. And you definitely destroyed it when you attacked me with a bottle for refusing to be your victim anymore. I walked up to the front door, my front door now, and slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, just like it had all those years ago when I was a child coming home from school. This house was bought with my money, I continued, not turning around to face her. My grandmother's money that she left specifically for me. You've been living in my house for 7 years, and now you're surprised that I want it back? Behind me, I heard Dad yelling at the movers to hurry up. Mom started crying again. The same manipulative tears she'd used my entire childhood whenever she wanted to make me feel guilty. But they didn't work anymore. I wasn't that scared little girl who cooked dinner and cleaned house and tried desperately to earn their approval. I wasn't the family ATM existing only to fund their lifestyle and dreams. I was Sarah Chen Davis, software engineer, homeowner, and apparently heir to more than I'd ever imagined. I was the granddaughter who'd finally claimed her inheritance, the daughter who'd refused to be stolen from, the woman who'd transformed from victim to victor. As the moving truck pulled away, Marcus appeared on the front porch. He'd decided to stay in town and was looking for his own apartment, a healthy choice for a 28-year-old man who'd never lived independently. "So, what are you going to do with this place?" he asked, looking around at the house where we'd grown up. I smiled, thinking about all the possibilities. I could rent it out and use the income to pay off my condo faster. I could sell it and invest the money. Or I could do something completely different. "I'm thinking about turning it into something positive," I said. "Maybe a support center for young people who've been financially abused by their families. Or a resource center for people trying to escape toxic family situations." Marcus nodded slowly. "That sounds like something Grandma Chen would have wanted." "Yeah," I agreed, looking up at the house that had been the site of so much manipulation and pain, but was now the symbol of my justice and freedom. "I think she would have." That night, I sat in my beautiful downtown condo, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Saw your story on social media. My parents did something similar to me. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone and I don't have to accept being treated like this." Similar messages had been coming in all week. Apparently, my story had resonated with thousands of people who'd experienced financial abuse, manipulation, and gaslighting from their own families. People who'd been told they were ungrateful for not accepting mistreatment. People who'd been made to feel guilty for their own success. I realized that my fight for justice had become bigger than just recovering my inheritance. It had become a beacon for anyone who'd ever been told they owed their abusers their life's work, their dreams, their freedom. If you've ever been treated like a family ATM, if you've ever been guilted into sacrificing your success for people who don't respect you, if you've ever been told you're ungrateful for refusing to be exploited, please know that you have the right to say no. You have the right to protect what you've earned. You have the right to demand justice. And sometimes karma comes with a brass key and legal documents. Share your story in the comments below. I'll read every single one, and I'll believe you.